Hi class. Today we're going to be working on project 4, which is the museum CSS layout project. This is the beginning page for it, so it's on page 159 in your books. And it's a museum that has hired you to build a new website to provide area visitors with information about the various art collections being displayed at their facilities. The client wants a website that can be quickly and easily updated and modified. In addition, the site should project a consistent look across and style across all pages. To fulfill these requirements, you will create and apply a cascading style sheet for the website. So we're creating a website that has continuity on every page. And so to do that, we're going to use a cascading style sheet to style all of the pages the same way. So all the paragraphs on the whole site will be the same font, all of the headings will be the same, all of the navigation will be the same, and that kind of thing, okay? So it says we want to create a new website to provide a brief description of permanent and traveling exhibits. We have a site already, but we can't figure out how it was built, so it's extremely difficult to change even a comma. We called the site designer, but he can't work us into his schedule for more than a month, and we don't have time to wait. The new site should be very easy to manage, and more importantly, easy to change. When a site is properly designed, the HTML file stores the page content, while the cascading style sheet file defines the appearance of page elements. This makes it easier to find and change the content since the HTML code isn't cluttered with formatting instructions. You're also going to use template files, which are an excellent tool for maintaining consistency across multiple pages of a site. The template defines the overall page structure, including common elements such as navigation links and editable areas in which content varies from one page to another. Okay, so it says if you make changes to common elements in the template file, those changes will automatically appear in pages where the template is applied. So we've already been over CSS a little bit. So cascading style sheet is a collection of formatting rules that controls the appearance of different elements in a web page. So you have two parts to your rules. You have a selector, which names the element that you want to format in your cascading style sheet. And then you have attributes, which define things such as the font, the color, the width, the height, background image, lots of other things. And you'll be going over more of those attributes as we go throughout the course. So the P is the selector for paragraphs, and it selects all the paragraph tags on the pages that the CSS style sheet is attached to. And then it's defining for all those paragraphs a font size of 14 pixels. So there are 3 different types of ways you can add styling to something. You can do it inline, which is actually in the HTML code. You can add a style tag like that. You can also do an embedded or internal style sheet, which is in the head section of a document. And then you can also do an external style sheet, which is the most common. It's saved as a separate file with a .css extension. So that's what we're going to be doing in this book, is using external style sheets. And those are handy because you can apply the same style sheet to multiple pages, and then you don't have to style every single page. You only have to do it one time. Okay, so let's get started. So you're going to download the museum file and unzip it and make that your root folder on your site. So I'm going to go up to Site and New Site, call it Museum. And I've already unzipped all of those. So I'm going to choose that as my root folder and click save. So now I have a few pages over here and I have all the images in my root folder. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is start a new blank page. So you're going to go to Dreamweaver and you're going to go File, New. And you are going to just create a blank HTML5 page. You don't even have to do anything here. You can just click Create. And then you're going to save that. So go File, Save. And it should go ahead and put it in your root folder that you've defined. And we're going to call it design.html. Make sure you put the HTML at the end. So this is what you would do if you want to create a template. That's what we're going to be doing. So we're just going to save it in the museum folder. And go ahead and click Save. And then you're going to go over to the CSS Designer panel and open that. And make sure this button is selected. It says All. And then you're going to add a CSS source to this new blank document. So we're going to go to the plus sign next to sources. And we're going to go to attach existing because they've we're going to go to create a new CSS file. We're going to create our own and we're going to name it here. So we're going to call it museum-styles.css. Make sure you type it exactly like that, all lowercase with the dash in the middle. And then click OK. So what that did is it put this line 6 of code in here, right, in our document. So it says link to this CSS document, and it creates the document. Okay, so now that we've done that, see the little stars next to our files? That means they're not saved. So we're going to go File, Save All, and we'll save the HTML page and the CSS page, which right now is blank. Okay. Okay, so make sure you're in design view here, not live view. And then you want to look at split so that you can see the white and the code. So you're going to go over to your insert panel, and under HTML you're going to choose the header button, not heading, header. And when you add something from the insert panel, you have the option to create a CSS rule for that element right then and there. So we're going to do that. We're going to click New CSS Rule. And we're going to choose Tag from that first drop-down menu. And then, so this is an HTML element. So these are elements that are standard to HTML. If you want to do a specific one, you can do a class or an ID. And if you want to do something even more specific, you may need to do a compound selector. But a tag selector is an already made HTML element. So these are all the possibilities for you. These are all the HTML tags that you can define selectors for. So we're going to go down to header and choose header. So in our CSS document, it's going to put a new selector that says header, and everything, all the rules that apply to that are going to apply to this new section in our document. Okay. And you can actually set the rules and tell it where to go. So we're going to go down to, instead of this document only, that would be an internal style sheet. We're going to choose our external style sheet that we created. And that's where it's going to put the elements that we define, okay? All right, so tag, header, and museumstyles.css. You need to change all three of those and then click OK. Now it's asking us, what do you want to define as part of your role? So we're going to go to background and we're going to type in the background color. So put in the hashtag sign and then FFF. So that's going to define our background color as white. In the width field, so we're going to go down to the box category. For the width of this header, we're going to type in 930 and it's already set on pixels. Keep going down below width, you'll see padding. Leave this same for all box checked, and then in the top field put 10, and it should set all of them to 10 pixels. For margin, you want to uncheck the same for all box, and we're going to set a 0 margin on the top and the bottom, but the left and right we're going to set to auto. So on the left and the right, you just change that to say auto. Auto will center the element in the page. Okay, so think of it as we're creating a box for our header and we're telling it that we want the box to be 930 pixels wide with 10 pixels of padding on each side. And then we want the top to have a 0 margin and the bottom to have a 0 margin, but then left and right, we want it to center however big the page is, okay? So this is going to write all of the CSS code for us in museumstyles.css. So when we click OK, it's going to write all that code. And then that should say at insertion point, and you can click OK there also. Okay, so here's our header. You'll see that up here you have a box that's 930 pixels wide, and it's centering itself. The box is centered on the page. And then down here in the code, it's a header tag. It says content for new header goes here. The CSS is going to be on a different page because it's an external style sheet. So if you click on your style sheet up at the top, you'll go to that and it wrote all of these rules for us. So for the header, we have this background color, padding, width, margins, and so on. And then it's got the curly brackets around it, okay? So we're gonna go File, Save All, and we'll keep going, okay? So go back to your source code here. Go ahead and turn on the live view. And we can see our elements that we have here. Go ahead and click on the footer button over on the insert panel and drag it to the live view until you see a green line right underneath the header, like that. Drop it there. When you add elements in live view, it's helpful because it gives you like the visual of where it's going to drop. Okay, so we have our footer, content for a new footer tag goes here. Now let's create some attributes and a rule for the footer. So this time, since we dragged it over, it didn't give us the option to add the CSS rule right there, but that's okay. There's another way to do it. So you're going to go to the CSS Designer panel, and you're going to click on museumstyles.css as your source. And then we're going to, the footer's still selected. So right now, if we click add a selector, it's going to automatically make it the footer. But we don't want body footer, we just want footer. So you can actually use the up or down arrow to make the selector less or more specific. So we're going to use the up arrow once, and it's just going to be called footer. You could have typed that, but basically what that does is it looks at the tag selector down here, and it takes away the parent tag. Okay. Press enter to add the footer to our style sheet. And then when you have footer selected, you can see all the properties or attributes that you can define down here. This is actually the way I prefer to do it, just adding selectors over here in the CSS Designer panel. But you can do it how you want. Okay, so in the properties section, go down to layout, which it should already be on, and make sure that this show set box is not checked so that you can see all the properties that are possible. You're going to double click on width and type in 100% with the percent sign and press enter. So we want the footer to take up 100% of the width of the page, whatever that is. It's good to use percentages when you're designing a page because it's going to make the page responsive to whatever size screen your user is viewing it on. Okay, so then go down to margin. And our top margin is going to be 10 px. On these ones, you do have to type the px after it, okay? Top and bottom margins, 10 pixels. And then go down to the text properties. These little boxes are like shortcuts to those properties, to the different categories. So from here, you're going to go down to text align and center your text. So it puts the footer text in the middle of the page. So go to File, Save All on that. Okay, next we're going to insert a div element. So let's go back to our insert panel. Make sure you're in live view still. Div is the very first one on our list. A div can be pretty much anything you want it to be. So we're going to use a div here to create another box. So we're going to click and drag it over and put it right in between the header and the footer. Okay, and for this div, usually with divs you want to add a class or an ID so that they're specific. So we're going to click the plus button here. And when you type it in live view, you have to use the hashtag for an ID. So we're going to do hashtag page dash content. And this is a specific ID that we're giving this box or div, and we can go in our CSS and define it later. So we're gonna press enter and make sure it's on museumstyles.css, which it is. Press enter again. So we haven't actually created a CSS selector for that ID yet, but when we do it this way, it creates it for us. So it put this down here, page hashtag page content, and it doesn't have any rules yet, but it puts the selector there for us. Okay, now go back to your CSS designer panel and you'll see that selector right there, hashtag page content. It's called an ID selector if it has the hashtag in front of it. And click on page content and then go make sure the show set button is not checked. Then go down to layout and you're going to change the width, double click on it, to 950 px and then press enter. This is going to be the same width as the header. Okay, then go down to margin and set your margin to 0 px. You have to click on it and set it. You can't just leave it. See how that one's grayed out? This one's not. Bottom 0 px. Left auto. Right auto. Okay, and it should then line up with the header box. Okay, now we're going to go down to the border properties for this element. And we're going to define a top border. So this is if you want to set all the sides the same. This is if you want to set one of the sides. So we're going to choose top. And the border top width is going to be 8 px. The style is going to be solid. And the color, type in the hashtag sign and then 54210F. It's like a brownish color. Press enter. And then you can do file, save all. So it puts this brown line across the top of it, and it's all defined right here in the CSS code under page content. Okay, so we're going to add some more selectors to our CSS designer. Go to add selector and start typing in, and you're going to get to nav and press enter. Then press enter again to create it. So for the nav section, we want a width of 200 pixels. And then we want padding to be 10 pixels on all sides. So you can click this little chain in the middle and it will set them all to be the same on all 4 sides. So we're just going to add some rules real quick and then we'll go in and we'll add the actual elements to the page. It's kind of backwards, but we'll go ahead and do it that way. So the next one is an ID selector again. So use the hashtag symbol and then type main dash copy and press enter. For that one, we want it to have a width of 500 pixels. We want the minimum height to be 200 pixels. We want the padding to be the same on all 4 sides, and we want it to be 20 pixels. And then we're going to set a margin just on the right hand side of 50 pixels. Okay, we didn't add anything to our HTML file here. We're just adding rules to our CSS document. Okay, and then the last one we're going to do like this is hashtag sidebar. And that's also going to be an ID with the hashtag. So you can make IDs whatever you want them to be. So the fact that they chose to use the word sidebar tells you that it's going to be a sidebar, right? But you have the power to control whatever you want as far as IDs and classes go. So your width is 350, your min height is 200. Okay, so once you've made all those changes to the CSS, you need to save it. Now we're going to go to the code view and look at design HTML. So we have header, we have a div, and we have a footer. We're going to add all these other elements now. So we're going to go to, I guess we're still in live view, maybe? Yeah, I think we are. So go over to your insert panel, and we created a CSS role for our nav, so we need a nav section. That's going to be this one right here that's called navigation. And go ahead and drag it to the document window, and when a blue border outlines the header element, release the mouse. Okay, so we're putting it inside the header. All right, so now you should have, inside your header tag, you should have one called nav. And that's called a nested element when you put it inside of something else. Okay, now go over to your HTML insert panel again and click on the section button and drag it to where there's no element that it's on top of, so like down below the footer, and let go. And then you'll see in the code that it appears before all the other elements. And this section, we are going to apply an ID. So we're going to click the plus button next to it. And we're going to type hashtag. And our two defined IDs that aren't being used yet show up in this menu. So we're going to choose main copy, and it's going to apply those attributes to that section. So that element should have a minimum height of 200 pixels. I defined it as a minimum width. That's why it looks funny. So I'm going to go in and change that under main copy. I'm going to trash the minimum width, and I'm going to set the minimum height to 200 px. And then my width should just be 500 px. Okay, so now if I select that element, it looks like it's the right size. Okay, so we have all of these elements on our HTML page. What if we want to rearrange them? There's another panel that you can use to rearrange things. It's called the DOM panel. So double click on DOM. If you don't see it, go up to Window and DOM. This shows you how all of your HTML tags are nested on the page. So HTML, inside of that we have head and body. And then inside of the head section we have those 3 tags. And inside of the body we have our section, our header, which has nav inside of it. We have a div and we have a footer. So what we're going to do is we're going to rearrange some things. So we're going to drag this section main copy onto the div page content and put it inside of that div. So it's going to nest inside of the page content div. So you should see a little twirly arrow and it should be indented. Then you want to click on the plus button next to that element, next to the section main copy element. And we're going to choose insert after. And we're going to type SEC for section and press enter. So we're adding another new section. And then if you double click to the right of that section, it should let you add an ID. So we're going to type the hashtag, and the only one left that we haven't used is called sidebar. So press enter. And voila. So you have page content, wraps around, main copy, and sidebar sections. Notice in your code over here you have the div with page content, and then inside of that you have section tags. Okay, so do file, save all. We're just building a layout here. This is the way to build a layout from scratch. Okay, go ahead and turn off the live view. Go back to design view. It outlines the boxes, but it's not necessarily completely accurate. Now on your CSS designer panel, go ahead and click current, and it'll just show you the ones that are selected or close to what you're using right now. And then click on the nav element at the top. Okay, so the nav element we put inside of the header. So whatever you click on your design view is going to then be selected over here when you have it on current mode. Okay, so if you don't want that, you could switch back to all. But so since we have it on current, it has nav selected. We're going to go down and check the show set box. So it's only going to show us the ones that we have set. And then at the bottom, it allows you to add more. So you can actually type a new property. So we're going to type float. And a float is going to, let's see, what do we want? Float right is what we want. So we're telling this property, the nav, to float to the right side of the page. So when you press enter, there it goes. It's going over to the right side of the page. It looks a little funny, but just keep going and it'll fix itself. Okay, go ahead and do that same thing for the main copy box. So click in the main copy box and go down and add float left to that one. So it's going to stick to the left side of the page. And then once we add the sidebar property, I think that's this one. Yeah, it's down here. So sidebar, we're going to add float right. Okay, so it looks a little bit messy right now. Probably because I did something wrong, but let me check. Yeah, I also, on the sidebar, I added a min width instead of a min height. Okay, there we go. So we've got our box. And that looks better. Okay, so it looks like what the book looks like right now, even though it looks funny. Okay, and then for the footer, go down to the footer. You're going to add a float left property. Okay. So the rule is with float properties is that if you don't have any float defined, it's just going to look funny. So if you define one element with a float, you need to define all the other elements with a float as well. Okay. So go File, Save All on that. Okay, so here is our basic layout. We need to add some more settings to things to get it to work. But we are building this from scratch. So this should be a really good example to you of how to start a website from scratch. Okay. So we're working on our layout and we're thinking of it as boxes. So when you think about the boxes, you have a box for the header, a box for the nav, a box for main copy, a box for a sidebar, and a box for the footer. So if you're looking at the CSS box model in your book, which is, we're on page 183, okay? The margin is on the outside of the box, so when you set a margin, it adds width to the outside of the box. The border is the edge of the element. The padding is space on the inside of the box, between the box and the content. And then the content lies within the padding. So that's how the boxes work, okay? So on page 184, we're going to start there with adding some content to our page. So you want to go back to Dreamweaver, make sure you're in Design View, and we're going to go to our Files panel. So we're ready to finally add some things to this, some actual content. So we're going to get our image folder open. We're going to go over to the Getty logo.png, and we're going to drag it into the header element. So where it says content for new header goes here, that's where you want to place it. And once you place it, just real quick, it's a good habit to get in, just go down to the alt tag and type a title for it. So just put the Getty Foundation. You have to have alt tags or search engines won't find your stuff, okay? So it's a good idea to just get in the habit of writing them. And then select the text that says content for new header tag goes here. Delete that because we don't need it anymore. And we're good. Okay, now we're going to do some navigation. So go over and select the text in the nav box. And on the first line, you're going to type about the Getty. Press enter. Traveling exhibits. Press enter. And permanent exhibits. Notice it's writing the code for us. We're doing the design view and it's writing the code. So inside of nav we have paragraph, paragraph, paragraph. Okay. So with the nav box selected, go back to your CSS designer. It should already have it selected if it's on current. And we're going to add a property. We're going to type margin dash top and press enter. And then you're going to define the margin on top as 50 pixels. And it's going to scoot your navigation down like that. Sorry, I gotta check something real quick because it's not lining up. I don't think. Yeah, we don't have to do the margin thing. That's in the old book, sorry. So click back on your nav and that top margin that we just set, go ahead and trash that. So I think we're good without it. Yeah, that looks better. Okay. So the next section we're going to select is the sidebar. And for this element, go to your CSS designer. We're going to go down and uncheck the show set box. And we're going to go down to background. You can set a background image for any of your boxes. So we're going to do that. We're going to go to background image and URL, and we're going to choose browse. Go inside your images folder and pick the parchment.png. And then keep going down and says background image background repeat. We're going to choose no repeat. Okay. So automatically, if you give something a background image, it's going to tile it to fit the box. So we don't want that here. Okay, so now go to live view. And you can see part of the parchment, but you can't see the bottom of it, so it looks a little bit funny. So we're just going to fix that real quick. So with your sidebar still selected here, you're going to just go to background position and choose on the right side, you're going to choose bottom. Hang on. So if you click on the percentage, it should let you choose bottom. Okay, so you're seeing the bottom of the image now on the y-axis. Okay, so this is your x-axis and this is your y-axis. And then also on the same sidebar, we're going to add some padding. So go back up to the layout section, and for the top padding, we're going to do 10px. For the right, we're going to do 30. For the bottom, we're going to do 30. And for the left, we're going to do 30. Okay, so we're moving it down here. Whenever you add padding, you're actually adding pixel width as well. So that's why it moved down. There's not room for it to be next to this section, the main copy section. It's too wide of an element now. So where we added 30 pixels to the left and to the right, we need to subtract 30 or 60 pixels, I guess, from the width of that element. Okay, so click on sidebar again, and your width is set at 350, so we need to subtract 60 from that. So we're going to set our width now to 290. Didn't know you were going to get a math lesson here. Okay, so if you add margin and padding, sometimes you have to compensate for it with width and subtract from the widths. Now that element can appear next to the main copy element. Okay, now click on your main copy element and click on main copy over here. Go down to your background properties. And we're going to choose a color. So the color we want is basically the color of the parchment. So if you click on the little color swatch and then you use the eyedropper, you can find a shade of that parchment that you like. And then press enter. Okay, so we're giving that a background medium yellow color. And we're going to save all. Okay, now we're on page 188. We're going to define some properties for the body tag, which will trickle down to a lot of the tags on the page. So it's kind of like setting some global settings for your site. So go to your CSS Designer panel and go back to All instead of Current. Click on Museum Styles.css, and we're going to add a new selector called Body. And press Enter twice. Okay, so on the layout properties, we're going to set our margin shorthand. So click on Set Shorthand and type 0px. That's going to set all 4 of the margins to 0 on the body. Then go down to padding and click on the lock button and then type 0px. That's going to set our top padding to be 0. Actually, it's going to set all of them to be 0. Yep. And then what else are we going to do? So this is what your style sheet should look like. Also for the body, we're going to go down to background and set a background image. So make sure you're on body, background image, URL. You're going to click the browse button and set your background image to floor.jpg. background size, we're going to set to cover. So it's going to stretch out to cover the page. And background attachment, we're going to set to fixed. So the background image will remain in place even as you're scrolling. That's what the fixed value does. Okay, more settings for the body. We're going to go down to the text properties. We're going to choose the font family that says Gotham, Helvetica, New, Helvetica, Arial, Sans Serif. We're going to choose a font size of 14px as our default. Font weight is going to be 300. And the line height is going to be 22 pixels. Okay, so this is kind of defining global properties for the whole site. And then you want to go ahead and save that. File, save all. Alright, so now we are up to stage 2. This is about creating a template. So you can create templates in Dreamweaver and then you can apply those templates to multiple pages. So for example, this design.html page that we've created is going to be our template for other pages. So let's go back to design view. And before we actually make our template, we want to create some links that work. So we're going to select About the Getty. And I'm just going to go down to my properties panel and link it to about.html. You can click on the browse button if you want and choose about.html. That might be a good way to do it. I'm going to highlight traveling exhibits and link it to the traveling exhibits page. And permanent exhibits, I'm going to link it to the permanent exhibits page. So if you have things like links, placeholder text, any of that, you want to get rid of the placeholder text before you actually go in and do the template. Looks like I've got some settings wrong here on the parchment, so I need to check into that real quick. So I'm going to go over to sidebar. I think I made a mistake under background position. This shouldn't say 0%. This should say center and bottom. Let's see if that fixes it. Sorry, let me just check on that real quick. See what I did wrong. So for sidebar, it says choose center. And choose bottom. Then it has padding top is 10. Right, bottom, and left is 30. Min height. What else? What did I do wrong? That should be working. I'm not sure why it's not. Oh, did I set the padding instead of the margin? No, it's supposed to be padding. Well, right now I can't see what I did wrong, so I'm just gonna keep going, but you should be seeing the bottom of your parchment on your page. If I figure it out, I'll let you know. Okay, so you select the placeholder text and delete that. Go to your footer selector, and in the properties of the footer, we're gonna make the text white. So the color white, so you can actually read the footer. And then go ahead and select that text and replace it with site design by Against the Clock Inc. And then go File, Save All on that. Sometimes you're gonna have to play with layouts because they can get a little bit tricky, but we're just gonna go with this one for now, and I'll show you how to do the template, okay? So we're gonna go File, Save as Template. So once you get your template built like you want, you can save it as a template. We're gonna type in the description, museum, site template. And it's going to save it as a DWT file. So go ahead and click Save. It's going to put it in your root folder. When it asks you to update links, you want to say yes. And here's what it did. It went over here, created a templates folder, and put your design.dwt file in that folder. Okay, so you can tell if you're working on a template by the file name up here. So if it's DWT, that's a template file. Under the title, it says untitled document in the code view. Just type the Getty Foundation so that we apply that to all the pages. Okay, now we're going to add what are called editable regions. And this is going to be a region that you make changes to once you apply the template. So a template kind of locks the page to where you can't make changes to the main elements like the nav and the logo and stuff. You would have to go back to the template to make changes to that. So we create what's called an editable region so that people who are working on the site can modify things on that page without going in and modifying all the main things. Okay, so you want to click inside the main copy box that we created and go down to your tag selector and select main copy. So it selects that whole entire box. Then you're going to go over to your insert panel and go down to templates. These are these are just related to the templates, okay? So we're going to click on editable region. And we're going to call this editable region page content. And then we're going to click OK. So we're making this editable so you can change it on each page. And if you click on it, click on that page content in the design view, you can see where it starts and ends in the code. So we're going to move the ending of it to after the sidebar. So go ahead and highlight what's on line 23. And then you're going to click on it and drag it just past the end of line 24. So we're also going to include the sidebar in our editable region. Okay, go to File, Save All. I guess the sidebar is supposed to look like that. Because it looks like that in the book, so I wasn't wrong. Okay, good to know. We're on page 195. We're going to start applying the template to existing pages. So we've made our template, we've made it look nice, we have our navigation set up. Now we're going to apply it to the different pages. So let me show you what one of the pages looks like right now. It's just white and blank, basically, okay? So once we apply the template, it's going to have this header, navigation, background, all these things, but it's going to have the content that's on the page already. So to do this, so we're going to open the aboutpage.html. And we're going to go up to Tools, down to Templates, and apply template to page. Now the only template we have is this one, Design. So we're going to click Design, and we're going to make sure that this is checked, Update page when template changes. And then we're going to click Select. Now it's going to ask us, where's your editable region? So we have to tell it where that is. So on this menu down here that says not resolved, we're going to change that to page content, because that's what we named our editable region. Click OK. And ta-da! So everything that's in the main copy went on that column, and everything that's in the sidebar went on that column because it was already coded for us. So they already had a section called main copy on here, and they already had a section called sidebar, okay? Looking in your code view, go up to line 6, the title, and after the Getty Foundation, do a space and do a vertical bar, and then do another space and put about the Getty. So it's kind of like a subtitle, and then save that. Okay, now you're going to do that to the other two pages. So open the design page. Sorry, not design. Open the permanent exhibits page. Go to Tools, Templates, apply template to page, design, select, click on document body and change it to page content. Ta-da! On that one, after the title, just add the vertical bar and call it permanent exhibits and save that one. And then the last one we're going to do is the traveling exhibits. So this is like the really quick way to get a website going. It's pretty exciting when you spend all this time working on a template and then it actually works. Most of the time, it doesn't work this nicely. So just keep that in mind that if you do this yourself, you're going to have to do some troubleshooting, I'm sure. That's part of web design though. Okay, so we built our layout, we created our template, we applied the template to the pages. Now we are ready to define some more CSS settings. So we're going to open permanent exhibits. And we're going to go to live view. You can just look at the live view if you want. You don't have to look at the code. So we're going to define some properties for the H1 tag selector, which is this guy right here, H1. So go over to your CSS designer, choose museumstyles.css, and add a new selector. You can either press the up arrow a few times to get to just say H1, or you can just type H1. So for the H1 header, we're going to define these properties. So you can either uncheck the show set box and go through and find them, or you can check the show set box and just type them out, either way. So I'm going to do margin 0px, which will set all four sides of the margin on the header. Color, we might have to go through and, yeah. Let's uncheck the show set box and go down to text, and then under color, let's click on the color swatch. And then we'll pick our eyedropper tool again, and we'll use the same, the color of the client's logo this time. So that dark brown. 54210F is the number. Okay, and then our font size, we're going to set to 30px for all the H1 headers. Okay, now we're going to create another selector for H2 headers, which is the subheader right here. For all of our H2 selectors, we're going to make them that same brown color. We're going to set the margin on top to 30px, the margin on bottom to 5px, and the font size to 24px. Okay, keep going. We're going to create another selector that's called H3. Check the show set box, it makes it a little faster. So margin top 0px, margin bottom 15 px, font style italic, and font weight 400. That is this subheader right here. Okay, and then we're going to do another selector for paragraphs. So P is all you need. Margin top, we want to set to 0 px. Margin bottom, we want to set to 10 px. Then we're going to create another selector for A, which is our link tags. So for our links, we want the font weight to be bold. Text decoration, none. That's going to take away the underline. And then I'm going to go to the color picker and pick that brown color because I can't ever remember the number. Okay, here we go. File, save all. Okay, so have you ever been on a site where you're scrolling, and then there's like a button that says back to top that takes you to the top of the page? Those are called anchors. And that's what we're going to do next. We're going to create some anchor points. So again, you're going to be on the permanent exhibits page. And we want to look at the split view so we can see our code. So go right after the first opening H2 tag, right before it says the Italian Masters. And we are going to insert our anchor point there, okay? So this is the top of the page that we're anchoring to. So we're going to actually type the code. So you're going to type the opening arrow and an A, then do a space and type the word name equals quotation marks masters with an S on the end, then close that arrow and then close the A. So this is the code that we added right here. So that's an anchor point when you use a link with a name, okay? So masters is there, and when you look in the design view now, you're going to see a little anchor next to it. Okay, now we're going to do that to the other H2 elements as well. So let's go down to the next one, gods and heroes. Click in front of it right here. So you're going to type a name, oops, no. Okay, let's try this again. I'm going to type it in the code view. That's what I'm doing wrong. Okay. A name, and the name of this one is called gods, and then you close your A tag. So if you want to, you can just copy this little chunk of code, and then all you have to do is change the name. Okay, and we're going to keep going down to glass making. And we're going to put an anchor there as well that says glass making, and save that. Okay, Now go over to the sidebar element. Okay, go over to your sidebar and highlight the words "The Italian Masters." And what we want to do is make that a link to the anchor where Italian Masters is. So you're going to go to your insert panel and go back to HTML and click hyperlink. And under link, there's a drop down menu. And you're going to choose hashtag masters, which is selecting your anchor point. Just click OK. So basically what it does is it makes a link with href to masters. Instead of name being masters, it says href hashtag masters. Okay, then highlight gods and heroes and do the link to that one, gods. And then highlight glassmaking and link to that one. Okay, so that's how you create anchor points. We're going to do one more at the top of the page near the H1 tag. So right after the opening H1 tag, you're going to create one more anchor, name top. And that's going to take people back to the top of the page. So I don't know if you noticed, but as you're scrolling down, there's some text at the bottom of each section that says back to top. That's what we're going to link to that top anchor. So highlight it, hyperlink, and choose top. So that's going to make it a link back to the top of the page. Do the same thing for all 3 sections of the page. So this just makes it easy for your users if you have a lot of content on one page. You can give them some options to navigate around. Okay, so here's my page. I'm going to click on Gods and Heroes, and it's going to jump down to that. Say I read it, then I want to go back to the top. Then I can click on Glassmaking, jump down to that, back to top. So that's what those links do. Okay, one more section to our chapter. Before we finish is create a pseudo class selector. A pseudo class selector is for changing things like links when you hover over them. So we're going to go to the CSS Designer panel and we're going to add a new selector and we're going to type A:hover. So we're going to change what the links look like when you are hovering over them, basically. So go down to your text properties and choose a color that is lighter than what you have. So sample just maybe a lighter brown than the navigation that's there. And then once you have that set, you can go to live view and test it out. Whoops, okay. So when you hover over the links, they should change to that lighter color, and they do. Okay, so on the About page, let's do File Save All first. Let's go to the About page. And we're going to select the image near the top that looks like this. And then go over to your Insert panel and go down to Figure. So we're going to call this a figure. And when you insert a figure, it should ask you if you want it. Hold on. Oh, we should be in live view, sorry. Okay, so click on the image and then click on figure, and it's going to ask you if you want it before, after, or nest. We're going to choose before. Then you want to click on the image again and go over to the DOM panel. So here's our image. Right above the image is the figure and fig caption elements. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the image tag and we're going to drag it on to the figure element. So we're going to nest it inside of there. And then the paragraph that is right below that is going to be our fig caption. So you're going to click on that P tag right below it and you're going to drag that onto the fig caption element. Okay, and then all you have to do is delete the placeholder text that was there before. Okay, so what it does is it makes your figure like indented a little bit, and then it has a nice little caption underneath it, basically. Okay, now we're going to create a CSS selector to define how it looks. We're going to call it figure. And the width we're going to set to 300 pixels. The top margin we're going to set to 0 pixels. The right margin, 0 pixels. Bottom margin is going to be 10 px, and the left margin is going to be 10 px. And then if you keep going down, right below position is your float properties, and you're going to choose right. So this image is going to float to the right of the page. It's going to look funny for a minute, but we'll fix it. And then we're going to create another selector for fig caption. And the settings on that one, we're going to go down to font style and make that italic. Font size 12 px. Line height 15 px. And text align right. So we're making the text smaller and italic. The image still looks funny. Just wait just a minute, we'll fix it. Okay, so if you want to select an image that is within a certain element, you can do that with a descendant selector. So you're going to select the image again and go over to the CSS Designer, click Add Selector, and this is what's called a descendant selector. So it's inside of the main copy, it's a figure inside the figure tag, and it's an image. So that's what we want to create our settings for. So press enter on that. And we're going to change the width of our image to 300 pixels. And the height we need to set to auto so that it stays with its same aspect ratio. Okay, so now our image is fitting where it needs to. And then we're going to add another selector that says hashtag sidebar space P. So only the paragraphs in the sidebar. And the settings on that are going to be text align center. And then we're going to create another descendant selector to just select the H2 elements in the sidebar. So sidebar H2. Padding bottom 10 px. Text align center. Border bottom width is thin. Border bottom style is solid. And border bottom color is the brown color 54210F. Whoops, I have to put the hashtag in front of it. 54210F. There we go. Okay, so that's our H2 headers. Now for the navigation, we're going to do one more setting that is a descendant selector. It's called nav space P. So only the paragraphs in the navigation section. Margin top 20px. Font size 20px. And text align right. Okay, so save all, and that's the end of chapter 4.